Yay. Hi. Hi, Simi. How are you?
Okay. Okay, we will get started. I'm going to speak a little louder. I'm Patricia Swain. I'm a communications program manager with Delta Airlines, and I'll be moderating the session today with you and Ndidi. This is a empowerment session on women in industry, careers, and global development. This session will explore the diverse career opportunities available for women in global development, highlighting pathways to leadership, impact-driven work, and strategies for navigating the sector successfully. The panelists were women who are professionals from international organizations, NGOs, and development agencies. They will share their career journeys, insights, and challenges and opportunities in the field. They'll also have advice for building a sustainable and fulfilling career in global development. Is there anyone who knows what global development is? Okay, we're going to define that for you today as well. I'm going to introduce Tariye Gbadegesin, and feel free to correct me when you introduce yourself. Tariye, thank you. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Climate Investment Funds. As one of the world's largest multilateral climate funds, CIF deploys flexible, fast-moving finance to help low and middle-income countries transition to a low-carbon, climate-smart future. So she works in the sustainability space. She brings a wealth of global experience to the role from her time working at the International Monetary Fund, Boston Consulting Group, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Throughout her career, she has served in a range of climate and economic development organizations. She holds a BA in economics from Amherst College and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Who knows who else went to Harvard Business School here? Yes. Yes, Miss President Simi. Very good. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, Tariye. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So we're going to talk about why it's important for African women to advocate on the global stage to make the world a better place. It's important because it shows all of the girls in this room that they can be global leaders too. Tariye, do you want to share any more about yourself that I wasn't able to cover in your bio, or give a brief introduction and welcome to the girls on which we'll be speaking to them about today?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge my compatriot, your president, Simi Mogugu, for the amazing work that she's been doing with Junior Achievement. I should mention that I met Simi when I was in college, because I was actually, while I was at Amherst, Simi was um, in college in the area at Mount Holyoke. And I think it's an important story because I was one of the only Nigerians at Amherst College at the time. And I had heard that there was another Nigerian at Mount Holyoke. And so I went out of my way to track down this other Nigerian. And that's sort of the beginning of a friendship that has effectively lasted now over 20 years, over 25 years. And why this is a very important point is that it's really about creating a network of like-minded people that share your values and who will be lifelong colleagues, partners, and friends as really part of your trajectory. And so it's not a coincidence that Simi is in the room with you and I'm here. We remain sort of staunch advocates for each other. And it's very important that you look around this room and you see in your compatriots the formation of these types of relationships that will serve you for decades to come. And so while I first acknowledge Simi, I also want to recognize all of you for being here. Because again, Simi and I started our careers in rooms similar to these. And at the time, it seemed like you're joining a program, you're joining an internship program, and you're in a room with, young, smart people, and you're just doing your little bit, trying to get your next opportunity. But being part of these sort of organized deliberations, organized thinking, organized ways of planning and coding your path to a future, these are very meaningful. And so I want to congratulate all of you for taking the steps to be in this room today and to just sort of recognize that these are sort of powerful connections that you should see as foundational to your future going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Tariye. Yes, please give her a hand. Before we move into the next questions, I'm going to introduce our other panelists, Ndidi Nwuneli. She's the president of the One Campaign. She has over 25 years of international development experience and has been deeply involved in fostering impactful solutions in the global social innovation landscape with a focus on Africa. She's the founder of LEAP Africa, a nonprofit committed to developing dynamic, innovative, and principled African leaders, and the African Food Changemakers, which provides support to African entrepreneurs to start and scale resilient and sustainable agribusinesses. Ndidi holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School and an undergraduate degree with honors from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She was a senior fellow at the Mozavar Rahmani Center for Business and Government at Harvard Kennedy School, a visiting scholar at Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University, an Aspen Institute New Voices Fellow, and an Eisenhower Fellow. She's extremely accomplished. Welcome, Ndidi. We're so excited to have you. Okay, yes. Okay, she'll be coming back. But yes, Tariye, let's get into it. If you can define global development for the girls and how you found yourself working in this industry.
Sure. Well, maybe it's easier for me to think about this question in the context of impact and economic drivers and economic growth. Ultimately, economic development is about all the pieces that go into a country coming out of poverty, coming out of a low level of development where access to power, education, health, all the ingredients for a high functioning economy are weak, and they are strengthened and they emerge. Their markets also develop, and they ultimately are able to advance and are able to serve their citizens with increasing amounts of income, and ultimately can then start to make contributions and support other developed, countries that are coming behind them. And that's effectively the cycle. Interestingly, I think most African countries qualify as some level of developing economy, save for, I think, a couple in Southern Africa. I think we're using the words middle income, low income, lower middle income, etc. And sometimes it's I think about certain careers. I don't think anybody, when you think about when you go to elementary school and they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know anybody that says they want to be, a global development professional. I also don't know anybody that sort of says they want to even be an economic development professional. But what people do say, what kids do say are things like, I want to make people's lives better. I want to stop, when I see so many poor people on the street, I want to take them out of poverty. I don't want them to be poor anymore. I want them to be able to take care of themselves. And you do get that a lot from folks or kids when they're thinking about who they want to be when they grow up. And I think the principles around how we make the world a better place are really what underpin the term global development. But global development is almost amorphous. There's so many aspects to how the global economy develops. And it's everything from social development, so health, education, to financial development, so banking, financial systems, technological development, digital, AI, telecoms, um, biotechnology, agricultural development, um, and then energy development. So better ways to, better ways to deliver access to energy, better quality of energy delivery, private sector development. What's the role of the private sector? Because private sector produces the jobs, right? It's a private sector that actually hires. And so having a thriving private sector ultimately delivers a thriving economy. And all of these, I've probably only just mentioned about 50 to 60% of this sort of goes into the development system. Of course, climate is increasingly sort of a big part of development, because a lot of the nodes around climate, be it cleaner energy sources, because we're going to need increasing amounts of energy going through development trajectories. And there has historically been a link between advancement or economic development and rapid economic development with intensified use of energy. And so to the extent that we can intensify the use of energy with cleaner sources, so that we can also manage the global warming effects, that is ideally the path that we should use going forward. And so the energy conundrum toward development is something that climate finance organizations are seeking to solve. And then there are also the practical aspects of climate impacts. So with the changing extreme weather dynamics, we're seeing that while a country may have adequate economic development policies and they're doing all the right things, they get hit by an extreme event and suddenly they go back to the drawing board, and suddenly they have to borrow more funding, or they have to allocate part of the budget that was supposed to go to an investment activity into, for example, dealing with displaced people and the like. And so the ability to respond to the changing ambient atmospheric issues are affecting development. And that's where we need to build resilience to a lot of the changes that we're experiencing as a way to build economic resilience. So that intertwining of climate and economic development, the mainstreaming of that thinking into how you plan for how a country is going to not only grow, but how the actors within it are going to emerge becomes very, very key. And that is the overarching discipline of this space. But where one plays within this can really be addressed from so many different perspectives, which is why I think the field can actually be very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to connect some dots for you all, I heard some of you earlier today saying that it was your dream to help children not live on the streets and not have enough food to eat. And so that goes into some of what Tariye is speaking on. Tariye, to also help them further, understand where they could fit in this industry, can you describe some skills and experiences that are essential for entering the sector?
I actually think that I think this question actually speaks to a more fundamental question about how do you think about your career, and how do you think about how you evolve your how you invest in certain things to be able to participate in particular sectors. And there's very sort of tactical approach to how you think about your career, which could be, accounting, law, medicine, finance, and the like. And then there's more principles-based approach as to what are you seeking to impact and what are you seeking to achieve. And the technical side of things is often really more about what is the technical skill that you're willing to spend hours and hours becoming a master of. And oftentimes that ties to some level of your maybe your talent, as well as your willingness to put the hours in. So are you willing to put in the hours to know finance, willing to put in the hours to know medicine? That's technical. Now, principles based is what space of the world are you trying to influence? What problem are you trying to solve? Because you can solve a problem using different technical contributions. So you can solve for a children's poverty issue from a medical perspective by solving for healthcare challenges, right? You can solve for having better access to energy as a lawyer, as a financial provider. You can solve the problem using from different perspectives. But the question is, what problem are you trying to solve? And how do you dedicate your life to solving that problem? And how I got into this space was that, I grew up, many of you might be from Nigeria. I grew up in the Niger Delta in Nigeria, which is a part of the country that has some of the richest wetlands and rainforest. My family was very active in preserving and doing conservation work. And at the same time, we were at the center of the oil and gas sector. And so you would have gas flares, you would have very wealthy actors, and you'd have great deals of poverty. And I wanted to solve the problem of the dichotomy of development where there's so much inequality. And I articulated that from when I was 12 or 13, that I'm really interested in how do you solve for developing an area like the Niger Delta when it has so much wealth and somehow the structures don't allow that to be solved for. And everything else I did was, well, maybe I'll major in economics. I'm interested in getting an MBA to see how we can do that from a finance perspective. I bumped into the recruitment HR person from the IMF when I went to the Harvard Business School Africa Business Conference. And I was like, oh, this could be cool, working at the IMF. That could be fun. And then I got that role and I went on to do that. But the principle is very important. What problem do you want to solve? What do you want to dedicate your life to? And what are the technical disciplines that you enjoy or you're willing to spend the time investing in to be able to solve for it? In my field, we have lawyers, we have finance people, we have doctors, we have development policy specialists, we have environmental policy specialists. But all of us are bound by, I think, the core value of trying to solve for the problem of economic inequality, poverty, growth, and improvement of people's lives.
Yes. And that's another reoccurring theme today is thinking about what problems you can solve. What would you want to dedicate your life to? What feels like your purpose? That's how you're led to your path. Can you talk about a time where you've overcome a challenge that may have seemed insurmountable at the time?
Well, I think the types of challenges that one faces, maybe I'll speak about it from a career standpoint, right? Is that sometimes you go down a path from a career perspective, or it could even be from an education perspective. Maybe you start down a major and you find that it's been a catastrophic decision. Maybe it wasn't you're not doing very well in the topic, as an example, or you go down a career path and the organization doesn't love you as much as you love them. And for some of us who are really passionate about our work and sort of give everything to our work, we often find ourselves in love with our organizations. And a lot of the time, the organization you love so much might not love you the same. And if you've defined yourself by potentially what that organization does, or potentially it might be a relationship with a mentor. So sometimes your mentor plays such a big role, and then suddenly you've grown too fast, or the mentor's own priorities have changed, and you find yourself somewhat lost because the way you had defined yourself no longer holds, and you may find yourself in a crisis. And so I have found myself in a crisis where an organization that I was in love with didn't love me back. And I had to sort of find a way to redefine myself outside of the structure of an organization that meant so much to me. And this was when I had to go back to the principles. And I always say, let's go back to first principles. So anytime you get lost, and it could be even in your personal life, but for me, I tend to have the same issues in my career life. Go back to first principles. What problem do you want to solve? Where are you best suited? What's your special sauce? Where is it that you're showing that you're making a difference, and you're willing to sort of go that extra mile. Um, One of the ways I try to think about purpose and what you also call the special sauce is, I think, the Oprah phrase about your fingerprint, in that every one of us here has a unique fingerprint. And in the context of who you are and how you grow, your unique fingerprint would be things like your parents, where you were raised, the type of food your mother cooked, the type of art you draw, the things you love to read, your accent, the way you laugh, the way you tell stories, the way you present, the way you analyze, the way you think. All of those things make up your fingerprint. And whenever you get lost, and whenever you find yourself, needing to redefine yourself, always go back to your fingerprint and look at your fingerprint, the problem you want to solve, and you'll find a new path. You would always find a new path with those sort of core fundamentals that stay with you always.
And with that in mind, how can young girls build confidence in pursuing careers despite societal expectations? There have been conversations this week about struggling to do what you want to do versus what others want to do, like your parents, and having just conflicting expectations of what their ambitions should be. So how can they find confidence in spite of that?
Well, you broke up a little bit, but I think the question was really, the discussion point is really about how do you sort of manage your sort of conviction to sort of realize your ambitions in the face of um, external perspectives around what you should or should not do, whether that
Yes.
is your family, whether that is the society, whether that is the culture, different things like that. And it's a very difficult question to answer, especially in context where folks may not have a lot of choices. A lot of times women have to choose the path of safety, of security. I would like to I point out that, there was a woman who wrote a book called Lean In, about, every women should take a seat at the table and lean in and do a whole sort of things like that. And there was a lot of criticism because it didn't really speak to the understanding of the real risks and challenges that women face. So my response here is really to acknowledge that this is hard, and if and women will often have to make choices sometimes around safety, around security, around, sort of saving space to fight another day, right? And so let's just acknowledge that type of space. Um, but in a more sort of stable environment where maybe the pressure is not it's just a soft pressure, it's not a violent pressure or something like that, and you have some space to maneuver, I would say it again goes back to what is your conviction. And conviction, I think, is another term that we don't use a lot in girls' leadership. Conviction is when you believe in something and that you have agency to deliver that. Conviction, agency. Conviction is the belief, agency is the ability, and that you can do it.
Write that down.
Yeah. And so when you're dealing with a societal pressure, like, well, you know, a woman shouldn't be in, you know, finance, like there are not a lot of women in finance, right? Well, the conviction is I need to solve for getting more money into these places. Agency is I can count, and I'm gonna help people. And my conviction is that I'm gonna help people using finance because I can. And suddenly, when you're helping people and people are going back to your family to say, I got helped because of this skill, what a brilliant person, suddenly things change. So conviction and agency are very key to you being able to forge a path, even when the noise around you is saying different things.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about emerging trends and opportunities in the field of global development, if you can kind of relate them to some of the things that girls at this high school level may be thinking about or interested in? You touched on a few already with childhood poverty. Anything else that might be relatable in that regard?
Yeah, well, I think, again, if you go back to just the fundamental disciplines, when it comes to finance, there is a lot of, and financing economic development, the emerging trends really around blending finance. So when I started my career 20 something years ago, it was, you had public finance, you had private sector finance, and there was this evolving concept of public and private finance together. That was so remarkable. Now it's so much more sophisticated, it's so much more intricate around blending different types of financial structures, and it's a much more intricate affair. There's of course going to be a big role for AI, and everybody's talking AI, so let's just put AI and say I've said AI, and okay, now it's cool like everybody, but AI, fine. So I think if there's at a certain point, sort of climate and sustainability, that's been a big, it's considered mainstream. Now you're having shifts in politics that are saying, there's maybe some sense that climate is going to take some sort of backstage. But the reality is that climate thinking and the thinking that underpins climate. So there's going to be a lot around climate risk and risk models. So what are the new models for assessing risk in this environment? And that's going to tie into digital and AI as well. So what are the new models for assessing risk? And then what are the new models for assessing sort of like global sovereign, global balance sheets? And so those are sort of the, just to mention a few. I think the other thing you should often think about in these type of worlds is where is there a big gap? So suddenly, the US has cut off all its international aid. Ndidi will probably speak to this a little bit. And you have significantly declining overseas development assistance envelopes. So how does that fill the gap? What's going to fill the gap? So there's going to be a lot of thinking about what's the role for philanthropies, what's the role for private sector. So there's going to be a big need for filling all of these demands, and we haven't even started contending with all of that. There's just a little bit of work around the edges. But let me pause because I've said so much. And if you think Ndidi and I look the same, that is true. We do look the same, and everybody thinks, and we often are confused for each other. So people come up to me and ask if I'm Ndidi, and I think they do the same thing to her. And I'm like, oh, I'll just give her a call. So let me pause so that my second can come in here because I think I've segued nicely for her on some of these topics.
Thank you so much, Tariye. Please give Tariye a round of applause. You know, I'm so incredibly proud of these two women. You know, I was at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Who knows what the World Economic Forum is over here? Who has heard about it? You guys should know these things. This is where the leaders of the world gather to talk about how to improve the world. And I had to make a presentation about the business case for African girls and why you need to invest in African girls. And I use these two as examples of why. Because when you invest in an African girl, she rises up to a global development position, such as these two powerful women, and they try to make the world a better place. So it's not just for themselves, but for the world. So please give them a round of applause for being the phenomenal women that they are. I'll let Patty continue moderating and let her introduce Ndidi and let Ndidi introduce herself. But I want you to know the how lucky you are to have these women addressing you today. They are not leading African organizations. They are leading global organizations. And both of them, they are the first Africans to lead these global operations. So just these are major organizations. No African has been CEO of either organization, one.org or Climate Investment Funds. These are usually occupied by white men. And you have African women running this. So really, really, you need to be paying attention to how they got to be where they are so that you too tomorrow can be where they are. So I'll give you back to you, Patty. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Great to be here. And apologies for joining late. My meeting just kept on going and I was kind of chairing, so I couldn't leave. Apologies. I don't normally do this. I believe in being on time. So ladies, please don't take my example of joining a little late as something to follow.
Welcome, Ndidi. We're happy to have you. If you'd like to share just a little bit, I gave the girls a brief bio of you, but we'd love for you to share something about your background, your education journey, how you met Tariye and Simi. The girls have heard a bit about Harvard Business School. Maybe you want to share some of that experience with them.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was born in Nigeria, in Enugu, which is a small town in the southeastern part of Nigeria. My parents were both professors, and I was...
Yeah, you have family here.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm happy to hear that. Proud Enugu girl, proud Igbo girl. And moved to, in fact, I have to say that I grew up on the same street as Simi's husband. I don't know if she'd like me to talk about her husband in the room, but I grew up on the same street in the house that he used to live in. So trust me when I say I've known the Mogugu family from when I was about 5 years old or even 3 years old. And lived on the same street. But I met Simi when I was in college. She was at Mount Holyoke and I was at UPenn, and we went to an African conference. So these type of settings are very, very powerful. And we were both young teenagers and very ambitious, but we knew that we loved Nigeria and Africa, and we wanted to devote our lives to doing the great work. And was there when Simi came and started Junior Achievements and became a volunteer. And I actually started volunteering for Junior Achievement when I was about 20 years old in America. So I love Junior Achievement, and I think it's such a powerful vehicle. And I have followed the work that Simi has done with girls from when she launched her first camp for girls in Lagos many, many years ago. So I applaud you, Simi, for your vision, for your tenacity, for your courage. Please give Simi a round of applause. I don't know if you guys call her Auntie Simi or what the right lingo is. What do we call you? Is it Auntie Simi? What do you girls call her? I can't hear them, but I assume it's
President Simi.
President. Oh, I love that. That's even better. Ooh, President Simi. We're calling forth even a greater presidency and a greater future. So yeah, it's been a long time. And that's the first message I want to give you is the importance of covenant relationships. You know, like Tariye says, we get confused often. I was at COP in Egypt and people were saying, oh, but we just saw you. And I was like, no, it wasn't me. And even Tariye's kids have said, oh, somebody looks like you. And so there are some people we don't want to be associated with, we don't want to look like. But if they're covenant people who you're happy to be confused with because they are women of excellence, they're hardworking, they're visionary, they have integrity, that is something that you have to, from an early age, find a core group of people who can challenge you, help you, support you, and pull you up. And that's, if I look at my story, I don't think I would have gotten where I am today without not only a very strong family network, my siblings, my parents have been incredible, but also sisters, groups of sisters in different parts of the world who have really supported me, and deep and abiding friendships. I'm still best friends with my best friend who I met when I was 6 years old. I think Tariye has a similar story. And having those people who hold you accountable and who support you is priceless. I think the second is just the commitment to finding something that you're passionate about, a cause that gives you energy. I always tell young people, what gives you energy? What gives you joy? Or in my case, what makes you angry? I have been someone who, my name Ndidi means patience, but I've been very impatient, and I had a very hot temper when I was young. And I used to get very angry about different things. And I think that passion is what I still have today. The anger is what propels me to want to make a change. And I've started about 6 organizations that are still ongoing today. And I've helped start about 20 across Africa. And they're all motivated by what makes me angry. And the reason I'm in this job is the same thing. I mean, I didn't apply for this job. I was headhunted. At first, when they approached me, I said, no, I'm not interested. I'm not in this industry of advocacy and activism. And I even gave them names of other women that they should talk to. But they said, you know, we really want you because you have a track record of running organizations that are efficient and effective, and you care deeply about Africa. And that's the second thing. The first thing is have a community of friends and sisters. The second thing is definitely find what you're passionate about. And the third is have a track record of excellence. Everything you do has to be good. Everything you do has to be excellent. And Oprah has a quote that says, excellence and integrity have no hiding place. So you have to work hard. I know nowadays it's not not the popular girls who, you think, oh, those who work hard finish last. I want the soft life. But honestly, hard work pays. And my experience is that if you put in the hard work, you get far. And then the fourth thing I would say is the importance of faith. I mean, I gave my life to Christ when I was only 13 years old. I became a committed Christian, and my faith has shaped my path, and God has been the master strategist in my life, opening doors, closing doors, admonishing me when I go wrong, but also really elevating me to new opportunities. And so you have to find your faith when you're young, and you have to stick with your convictions and develop a personal relationship. And for me, that has been really important. So I'll stop there. I'm sure you get into specifics about development and what I do, but that's kind of a bit of my story.
So yes, we've heard from Tariye. We would love to hear how you found yourself in global development and what about it really motivates you. The things that make you angry, as you said.
Yeah. So global developments, for me, I've come to it from 3 angles. One is from the food ecosystem, which I've spent a lot of time on. I believe that Africa is naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. We have the best food in the world. How many of you in the room agree? Raise your hand. Some of you might not know how good your food is until you've eaten food from other parts of the world. Many Nigerians carry spices when they come to international conferences because global food is not as good as ours. The Ghanaians carry shih tzu, right? And the Nigerians carry different types of mixed spices. But when I moved to America at 16, people used to tell me, where are you from? And I'll say, I'm from Nigeria. And they'd be like, isn't that where they had the war? My mom used to say, finish your dinner. There are starving children in Africa. Don't you still live on trees? Do you have food in your house? And I would hear that this narrative of Africa, the face of Africa was a hungry child, and the face of poverty was a female farmer from Africa. And this narrative made me very angry. It made me really angry because I grew up on a university campus, like I mentioned, where mangoes, we had enough to eat. Mangoes would fall from the trees, we would give our neighbors. We had food and we were not starving. Now, it doesn't mean there are not people in Nigeria starving, but I didn't know many of them. I'd see very, very few on the streets. And I was just so angry about this narrative. And from an early age, I committed my life to change that narrative. And so I entered the food and agriculture landscape and started doing things to transform the sector to ensure that we have enough food to eat and to even export. And my husband and I started a number of companies. One is Ace Foods. We process spices and snacks and complementary foods. We source from about 10,000 farmers. I also co-founded a consulting firm called Sahel Consulting, which works across Africa. We've done many projects in Ghana, across Tanzania, in cassava, in yam, in maize, really doubling and tripling revenue for our farmers. And then we also started Sahel Capital, which gives funding to food and agriculture entrepreneurs. And then lastly, we started African Food Changemakers, which works with entrepreneurs in 40 African countries, helping them scale. And through the work we're doing, I started getting some recognition. I started getting invited to shape policy. I was invited by the UN to be part of the Scaling Up Nutrition Network by the UN Secretary General, the United Nations. I was invited by the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition to be on their board. And then I started getting invited to shape global policy on Africa. And I would realize that in many rooms, I was the only African. People are sitting shaping the future of Africa, and I'm the only African. I'm the only Black person. And I was just shocked. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a book called Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, Scaling Resilient Agriculture Businesses. Because I realized people would come and visit our continent for 2 weeks, they become experts on our continent. Meanwhile, we live here and we are not talking about it. And so I've written a number of books. I've written a number of articles. Then you start being recognized as an expert on your topic. And I think for all the women in the room, if you find something that excites you and makes you angry or gives you joy, you want to become an expert on it. You want people to be able to say, you know what, you know what you're talking about. I found that in many rooms, the people who were considered experts were older white men in food and agriculture. And I didn't need to get a PhD in agriculture to become an expert. I just needed on the ground practical experience and the confidence to be able to tell my story. And that's kind of how I entered this sphere of international development in the ag and food landscape. And since then have gone on to serve on many, many different forums. And for me, international development is really an important area for you to consider. Because as a continent, that narrative has stuck. The same narrative I told you I heard when I was 16 is the same narrative today. Many people think Africans are hungry and Africans are poor. And many people think that we don't have agency, we don't have a voice. And so I really need more of you to think about influencing the future of your continent and your countries by being in rooms where you can shape policy. Simi talked about the World Economic Forum. But even beyond that, South Africa is hosting the G20 for the first time. The G20 is a group of 20 leading nations that get to define the future of the world. There's also G7, which is just 7 countries, the biggest economies in the world. For the first time, the One Campaign, the organization I work for, lobbied for Africa to have a seat at the G20. So we got an African Union seat. And I was in South Africa last week at the G20. Still at the G20, in most rooms, Africa doesn't have a voice. And so we need you to get into that. The One Campaign is a global advocacy organization. I've been a CEO for almost a year. The first African, as Simi mentioned, for an organization that's over 20 years old that focuses on Africa. And our vision is that Africa is an equal player. And our mission is to fight for the investments to ensure economic opportunity and healthier lives in Africa. And what do? We shape government policy all over the world about Africa. We produce data, critical data that shows what is happening on the continent, but also how other regions are treating Africa. We use young people as our champions to demand for governments to do the right thing in Africa and around the world. We also use celebrity voices, faith leaders, and trusted messengers. And then we launch campaigns on critical issues that matter. And we have offices in 3 African countries, Nigeria, Senegal, and South Africa. And we have team members in East Africa. And then we have offices in Brussels, Paris, Berlin, London, and then in the US and Canada. I sit in Washington, D.C., the same city where Tariye sits. And what has struck me from this experience is just how much work we still have to do to make sure that Africa is an equal player, how much work we still have to do to change narratives, and how much work we have to do to empower people. Nobody's going to give us the power. We have to take it. At a time when the rest of the world is looking inwards, we have to be the ones to say, we demand, number one, in your countries, that the government does the right thing. Number two, that you demand that the rest of the world treats you fairly and removes bottlenecks and removes strongholds on our continent. And number three, that we have to build bridges between our continents and the rest of the world. So that's what I do every day. And it's really, really tough. It's a hard time to fight for Africa, but we must, because we owe it to you sitting in the room. And that's why we do the work we do.
Ndidi, you can tell you have a lot of confidence. Can you give the girls some tips on developing confidence despite societal expectations? They've expressed some frustrations with what is expected of them versus what they would like to pursue.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, confidence is like a muscle. You only build it by trying it out, testing it out. And the interesting thing is that I grew up in a community where oftentimes girls were told they couldn't accomplish their highest potential, but I had a mother and sisters and a father who encouraged all of us to speak up, but also mentors who encouraged me to speak up. But I would say a few things. Number one is, I think there's one of the most successful Black women that I met recently, and I asked her, what is your superpower? And she said, being prepared. She told me that she prepared for 1 month for one meeting, 1 hour meeting. She prepared for a month. And I said, I have a lot to learn. But she says, I'm excellence. Excellence is my game, right? So she walks into the room with so much confidence because she had considered every single scenario. And so being prepared, studying, showing up well makes a huge difference. But beyond that, I think you need 3 people in your life. Every young person needs a coach, a mentor, a role model, someone who you can look up to, but you also need a critic, someone who can tell you the truth. And the good thing is that you can practice with that critic, right? You can practice, but you know that you need somebody who can hold you accountable to be your best self. And I think the sooner you find those type of people in your life, either in this room or outside the room, the better. Because I have a daughter who's about your age, I just want to tell you that it's a really rough time for teenagers in this day and age, even tougher than it was for us. Because social media is defining what beauty looks like. Social media is defining what success looks like. And I just want to tell you, don't believe the hype. Social media is making young women feel like they have to compete with each other instead of help each other. And I want you to know that you have to stand out by, number one, believing that you're beautiful, believing that God has given you everything you need to succeed, staying off social media and building trusting relationships with friends, expecting the best from yourself and from others, and setting clear values about what you can allow around yourself. I have people who, whenever I want to give up, they tell me I shouldn't. They are my cheerleaders. They are my greatest supporters. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to have people like that in your life who encourage you to be your best self and who help you to believe you can do it. And whenever you want to give up, they're the ones who say you can't. I have a group of friends who pray with me every week. Every Thursday, they pray with me, and another group that pray with me every Saturday. And I'm sure that if we went around the room, you'd see the power of prayer and the power of having sisters who support you. So I would say there are lots of things, but when I walk into the room, it's not just me walking in. It's really God. It's my friend Gloria likes to call it Godfidence. She walks into rooms with the confidence that God has gone ahead of her. And so I encourage all of you to have that Godfidence, because that is really ultimately what will sustain you.
Thank you. So we are going to start a Q&A. Does anybody have any questions for Ndidi and Tariye?
Before I take questions, I want to make sure you heard some of the things that they've said and you've written them down. Because, you know, you all have projects you have to complete after this week. So what makes you angry? No one's going to give you power. You have to do what? You guys were not listening. You have to take it. Because no one's going to give it to you. You have to take it. Okay, so now questions. Tariye, are you still there? Will you come back up in case some of these questions are for you? Say your name and where you're from.
My name is Christiana. I'm from Ghana. Please, this question goes to Miss Ndidi. Please, what I want to know is that you're talking about our agriculture sector. What if I want to go into the agricultural sector? What if I want to go into the agricultural sector?
Okay, go ahead.
What if I want to go into the agricultural sector? Who can I rely on? And also, what company is ready to help those who are ready to go into the agriculture sector?
Did Ndidi drop off?
No, I'm here. I'm just going to be
Oh,
mobile
okay.
because I'm going to another event. So I'm listening. I'll answer the question. Do you want to take a couple of questions? I mean, answer them all at the same time.
Okay, I'll take two more. You and you. Okay. And then I'll take.
Okay. Please, my name is Benedicta from Ghana. Please, I wanted to ask two questions, actually. I wanted to ask, how were you recognized? This goes to Madam Ndidi. And then what should one do to be recognized internationally? Because she said she was recognized when she was working, and she also started a food company. So I wanted to ask how she was recognized for people to know that she is good for the job, she's right for the job.
Okay, so I think both women have been recognized. I know Tariye has also been recognized. So I think the question is, how did you get yourselves recognition? What did you do to earn those recognitions? So Ndidi and Tariye, and then one more, and then we'll answer.
My name is Rebecca from Zambia, and my question is for Miss Ndidi. She said that you need to have a coach, a role model, and a mentor. And a critic. With regards to a mentor, as a girl, are you always supposed to have female mentors, or you can also have a male mentor? Thank you.
Good questions. And I think both of you can answer those questions. So I'll let you guys take it. Ndidi and then Tariye. Do you need me to repeat them or did you hear them?
No, we got them. Excellent questions. My only thing is I'm about to get into an elevator.
Do you want Tariye to start? And
Let
then
Tariye start, please.
okay, so Tariye, did you hear the questions?
Sure.
Can you get a male mentor? How do you get into the agricultural sector? And what was yours? How do you earn recognition?
Well, I'll let Ndidi handle the agricultural sector question. And maybe I'll just speak about recognition. I think for me, there are two parts of recognition. One is the through direct relationships. I think there's nothing like having someone put their hand up to recommend you or to put your name forward. And a lot of the time that happens because you've been developing relationships. And so what does that look like at this age, right? And through your career? It it means developing some connection with either people you work with. So when you're in, I don't know how many of you are in university right now, but when you're in university.
They're all in secondary school.
Secondary, okay. So by the time you get to university, one of the big tricks is to ask your professors for office time when you can actually or go up to them after class and ask them question that is not administrative. So it's a question that speaks to something they are particularly interested in, or something that you can do a bit further study on. And that speaks to the fact that you've been listening and you're processing and you want to do more. And so that's one of the first ways that a professor will click that this person is different. This person is not just sitting here. And then another trick is to ask for working on special ideas or projects. And this goes back to the what problem are you trying to solve? What's making you angry that you're willing to do further work on? And so when you then offer that, and try to connect dots as to how do you sort of get that person interested, I'd like to touch on this point about mentors, because a lot of people think that you get a mentor by asking someone to mentor you. So you send an email saying, can you be my mentor? And that's the best way to make sure that person will not be your mentor, because nobody is asked to be a mentor through a cold email and becomes a mentor. You develop a mentor relationship by connection, by asking a question that is meaningful to that person, and that person actually believes that through their relationship with you, they also get something out of it, even if it's because you're just really interested in a topic they're interested in, and they're keen to almost teach that topic, not just to be this theoretical sort of other figure, right? So this unpacking what is a mentor, I think, is more important than the gender of the mentor, right? Because the focus is what is the connection, and you might find that a woman might have a particular thing that you are able to forge a better connection over, and you might just find that somebody may be, that the sphere for your mentor network is based on more of similarity. Sometimes you might find that asking somebody really different from you to be meant to work on something with you actually excites them. Now, wow, somebody like this has never asked me before. So that's another issue. I would also like to emphasize, I'd like to underscore this concept for me, which is the fact that it's important to have a board of directors, which are, just as Ndidi mentioned, mentors, folks that keep you honest, the people that might be good for talking to you about the personal side of your life, professional side of your life, the technical side of your life. There will not be one Messiah other than Jesus Christ. So there will not be one person that will save you. And so the idea that you're developing these relationships and developing a mentor network, a board of directors, and you connect with those people by connecting with ideas that are important to them, problems they're seeking to solve, that align with things that you're interested in, and pull out their thinking and their connection with you. What happens then? Well, there's something that's happening somewhere, right? Maybe it's an event that's happening in a different country and they're paying for people to go to it, right? And they're saying, please, can you recommend a couple young people to go on that trip to Ethiopia? I got that ask one time. And I just recommended someone who had asked me a really good question, had did some follow-up with me. We had a connection, and I put the name in, and she was shocked. There she was on her way to Ethiopia, making a big impact. And I got a call from the organizers that the woman you sent made the best comment, because, my African folk, my African ladies, made the best comments. Thank you for referring her. Right. So that's sort of the circle of life. And it's very important that you think of these things as really being a circle. It's not sort of just it's not a sort of one silo here and there. It all comes together, that ultimately ties to recognition. And I'll just close on one point, which is the issue of voice. There was an interesting piece done the other day about how it's only recently that women's voices are being seen and heard through print and through social media and through different forms of media. And I think that's something that makes me angry, because women have always been speaking, women have always had voice. It's just who controlled the channel. And for the first time, because of digitization and because of innovation,
controls on the channels are so limited. So now the voice, which we have always had, we continue to have, has much more liberty. And find your voice, it's there, and use the liberty of these channels to speak about important things. And that's another way that you get seen and you get heard.
Thank you. Let me add a few things to what Tariye said. I completely agree with her. First, I would say for the agriculture, the lady interested in agriculture, that's wonderful. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I've put in the chat on a platform I created called African Food Changemakers. It's a free website that has data, information, links to funding, training, free training, for you. So please, my sister who's controlling the computer, please do give that information to the young lady. I also promise you I'll give 10 books to Simi for free to give you guys.
Thank you.
Who are interested in agriculture. Simi, if you need more than 10, let me know. I will be happy to send more than 10 for anybody who's interested in agriculture. And then in terms of the issue of whether you can have male mentors, you definitely can have male mentors. Mr. Fola Adiola, some of you might remember, was one of my earliest mentors. Bernard Lloyd. So I've had male mentors, but it's also important that you set very clear boundaries in your relationships, not just with men, but with women as well, so that you're clear about your relationships. Two more things I was going to say, and I just like to tell stories because that's what young people remember. And I want to tell stories about what Tariye referred to. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Tariye referred to, and I refer to this issue of excellence and integrity have no hiding place. And I'll tell you two stories about two young people. One was I went to a conference very early in my life, and a young person asked a question. So congrats to all the people who asked questions. And then Thabo Mbeki, who was the president of South Africa, said, "That was such a good question. I'd like to have lunch with you." And I was like, wow, I want to be that person who, when I stand up to ask a question, the president wants to have lunch with me. And I doesn't mean you should be intimidated, but always use the opportunity to ask an intelligent question. Because imagine that compared to somebody, a young person who was at Goalkeepers, a big conference that Bill Gates has, and they stood up to ask a question, and they said to the audience, I really want to tell you I'm struggling to pay my school fees at Columbia University, and I don't know if I can pay my school fees for the next term. All the Africans in the room felt smaller. And I went up to this young man. I said, if you had asked an intelligent question, people would have come up to you and say, how can I help you? And then you would have told them you need school fees money. So my first advice to you is please never, ever ask for help when you need something from somebody in a room where you don't know them. Instead, ask an intelligent question that will impress them, and then build a relationship. Then you can ask for help. But always think about what you can give, not what you can take. An intelligent question is a gift. Okay? The second thing is integrity. A lot of people are under pressure to show they're doing more, to show that they're starting things, to show for their applications, to change their age, to say they're younger, that they're young leader. My daughter showed me the other day, one young guy who is her friend wrote that he's the most influential young African. And I told her, please run away from this person. Anybody who says they're the most influential young person is, first of all, full of themselves. Number two, they're unethical. Because how do they know they're the most influential young African? Have they met everybody else? But I've met a lot of young people, and my first nonprofit was called NIA, for women, Ndu Ike Akonoba. And let me tell you, I met a young lady called Adeze. She was one of my mentees. And I trained her, I supported her, and like Tariye, I nominated her for a trip to go to Australia. She had never left Enugu, she went to Australia. Next thing, Oxfam calls me and says, Adeze has just won an award. And when I looked at the award she had won, it was as if she created NIA. They gave her grants and she used it to buy a car. NIA was not her creation, it was mine. But Adeze lied and said it was hers, and she got a grant to get a car. It broke my heart. And so please don't use this platform that Simi and JA have worked so hard to create We don't want international 419s. By elevating you, we're putting the burden on you to have integrity, to tell the truth at all times, to be authentic, to be humble, to be grounded, to work hard, and to be excellent. We are depending on you to be the next leaders who take over from us. We're already tired. And so I applaud all of you for joining this with passion, and I encourage you to please be the best that you can be. God bless you all. Sending hugs and kisses, and I'm proud of you all.
Thank you, ladies. So I think we're good to go ahead and wrap up, and you all can get back to your busy schedules. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Tariye. Thank you, Ndidi.
Enjoy the rest of your
Thank you
days.
so much.
Okay.
Girls, say thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Okay, so I know some of you still had questions, but we told them an hour. We've taken more than an hour from them. But I wanted these girls to speak to you, speak into you, so you see the potential. It's not just leaders in Enugu or leaders in Nigeria or leaders in Africa, but leaders in the world. That's what we're preparing you for. I wanted you to see that it's possible. Okay, because these girls are sitting in rooms with presidents and they are shaping policy about Africa and the world, not just Africa. They're, 1.org fights poverty in the world. When I was talking about End World Hunger, that's an organization that wants to end world hunger, and they've brought somebody like Ndidi there. Climate Investment Funds is an organization that wants to solve climate change issues. They're working with presidents and governments around the world, make them sign agreements that they will, support fighting climate change disruptions around the world. And so it can be you in that seat. They don't have two heads, like my mom says when somebody gets first and I come second. They don't have two heads. They grew up, you heard their stories. Tariye grew up in Port Harcourt, and Ndidi grew up in Enugu. So they do not have what? Two heads. Can do it. If they can do it, you can do it. And you can do even more. Okay? And so what did they say? What were some of the things that they said you have to do from now? What is one word? Okay, study well, show up well. I heard integrity. Be prepared. Believe in yourself. Confidence. Godfidence. Build relationships. Huh? Always practice. Sorry, what? Okay, have boundaries with male mentors. Don't be inappropriate. Huh? I'm still waiting for the word. I think I heard it here. Excellence. Please clap for her. Excellence. It is important to be excellent in everything you do. That is what gets you the recognition. Somebody asked about recognition. That's what gets you into the room when you're not in the room. That's what gets your name mentioned. Excellent. Excellence. Okay? If it is worth doing, it is worth doing well. And in this day and age of social media and texting, where people are getting terrible with writing, let that not be your problem. Don't write like you're speaking to your friend. When you write excellently, proper punctuation, proper grammar. If you need help with grammar, everything is on the internet. And there's also apps like Grammarly that you can download. Okay, proper spelling. Always use spell check. Be excellent. Be prepared. Do your research. You heard all of this today. Okay? All right. Thank you. Please, announcements before they break up. Oh, sorry, you had a question? Oh, the link was afchub.org. Okay, it's on your page, on the WhatsApp page, but the chaperone asking. afchub.org.
Okay, I know you all had a very long day. We're about to release you. I just want to say a few words. I want to thank Madam Akosua for choosing me for this opportunity. Thank you. And believe it or not, I was a bit intimidated by this opportunity, but we have to show up even when we're a little bit afraid, even when we're a little uncertain. And I also want to say how proud of you all I am. This has been a very extraordinary experience for me. I wrote some things down just so I don't forget. But when we go back to Atlanta, I'm going to tell our team how impressive you all are, how intelligent, eloquent, and beautiful you are. Every day, I've loved listening to you speak. I love hearing your perspective on things, the questions that you ask. You are so much more prepared for life than I was at this age, and it's because you're in spaces like this. So you truly are inspirational. I want you all to know that and to feel that and to be that. You represent your countries so well with pride and faith. And you're lucky to be learning from women like President Simi and her friends that she got to come here and share all of this life experience and wisdom with you. So she is a powerful and influential woman. I hope you recognize that, and I hope you can really soak this experience up. So great job getting through a 12-hour day. We love you guys, and I hope you have a good, restful night. Okay?